didn't know it at the time when we got out to the field to take off. But then the pilot says, well, you know, we're going to Russia. And I says, what do you mean we're going to Russia? We're not bombing Russia. Oh, he said, we're going to Russia, though. I said, well, okay. So we started out. We made our way and bombed, I think it was Hungary at the time, on into Volgograd, Russia, which is about 800 miles south of Moscow. The German army had just left Volgograd and had taken all the young girls with them and left about 50 infected women there for the Russian people to take care of. And I'm almost positive that they were returned back to Germany after the war. But it was devastating to the people of the little town that we were in there. And so we were kind of afraid, you know, how they would treat us, being soldiers and what have you. And but I'll tell you, we had a wonderful response. We did indeed. They took us into their home, which they hardly would ever do, and fed us, took care of us, talked to us, and so forth, best we could. We were housed in a girls' dormitory, and at the school there was an English teacher of all things. Spoke better English than I could speak. He did a beautiful job explaining all about what took place. And he stayed with us the best that he possibly could all that time. I'll give you one incident when we went out to the hillside. And I don't think I put it in the book. I think we finally took it out. But there was a whole squadron taking care of American U.S. trucks that we had lend-leased to Russia for the invasion. And so we knew of one of the items, you know, that we knew that something was taking place. And then he showed us a lot of other things about the town. And some of them I had a K, like I told you, I had a K-20 camera, and I took pictures of a lot of them didn't want me to take pictures of them, didn't want to be involved, but with pictures. But we went all around. The other instance, we were near the mess hall, and the only source of water was behind the mess hall, this little mess hall that they had for us. And they were given instructions, all the people were given instructions not to go anyways near that water source. They had a Russian soldier that was marched back and forth around there to make sure the people. But there was one gal that decided that she was going to, while he was walking with his back away from the area, over there to get a little water. But back over there, and he turned around and saw her. And of course his orders were to shoot. And he shot her. To this day, I don't know whether she died from or not, but he hit her, knocked her down, and she crawled around a little bit, and then by that time we left. And that was just one of the things of how strict they really were. We got out to several different places, like I told you about all the trucks and what have you that were there. And the Army was organized all right, but their equipment was poor, and we had never given them any of our equipment as far as that goes, except for those trucks. and they were getting ready for an invasion. And that's the second or third time that we realized that something was going to happen. And it was going to happen soon, and that we were in Russia for that very reason. Now, how secret it was, we do not know, but when we flew out of Belgrade to go to Romania to bomb, found out later that it was to bomb an airport, but not knowing what was on the airport, why it didn't really soak in what we were going to hit. But when we got into the air, and the pilot at that particular time had told me to, I forgot to tell you, that they issued a gallon of white paint and a gallon of black paint for me to use later on the plane. And so the pilot come up and said, I had secret orders here, and you're to go out to the plane, and you're to paint stripes on it. And I don't know how many of you recognize the fact that on the day of invasion, D-Day, all the planes and all the ships that were involved were painted with 5 stripes: white, black, and white. And I'm sure some of the older ones remembered or had seen airplanes that had this stripe on. So I did get that on there for them before we left. When we got over Romania, then I was really curious, because I knew that it was, it was the day, and it was D-Day and so forth. It was a special day. So I really paid more attention to what was going on, except I still did not know what we were bombing in Romania. And I didn't find out until we came back to Belgrade, rearmed, and started out again, and bombed on the way home again. And one of the officers in the intelligence I'd gotten acquainted with, because we had turned in all my pictures to him. And I asked him, I said, would you tell me what we bombed in Romania on D-Day? He said, oh yeah. He says, I'll tell you what it was. He says, you bombed an airport that had 140-some ground German fighters on the ground that didn't even know that you were coming in from the north. Otherwise, they'd all probably been in the air. We caught them on the ground, unexpected, from our flight out of Belgrade, and we destroyed the whole place. And that's just one item.
Daddy, will you explain why you painted the
Oh, thank you, honey.
explain why you painted the stripes?
Yeah.
For
Okay.
what purpose?
I painted the stripes, I found out later, is that during the campaign, so many of the downed B-17s and B-24s, mainly those two ships, were reconditioned and taken parts from other ships and were flying, and they were all painted kind of a pink color. And they would fly into formation with us as we were making our way, coming and going, and shoot our boys down. They would come clear into the bases with us, the different bases that they were stationed at, and would strafe and go out, and then when they went back to their own side, the color would identify them as German flyers in B-17s and B-24s. And that was the reason why those stripes were put on all the planes on that particular day, D-Day. And so it was for identification, really, basically. We were instructed to any one of them that came in that was that color, shoot it down. And undoubtedly there was quite a number. Now we had a few but they were far off. They didn't come near us. I will say that the what is it called? 262? Is that what the name of it? That their German fighter, their jet German fighter. I saw 2 of those, but they didn't come close to us either. They shot down a lot of our boys because they could come in and shoot them down and be gone because of the speed that they had. I told you that we had our escort was P-38s made by Lockheed. They were slower. They were non-maneuverable against the Messerschmitt 109 and the Focke-Wulf fighters. So how can I tell this? It's gone, yeah.
Are you afraid it's too graphic, John?
Well, it's a little graphic.
It's okay. I think we all know, when I wrote that letter to them, and they know that they're coming to hear what war was like, John. We know that you've got some wonderful stories and some funny stories, but a whole lot of war had none of that with it, and I don't want you to feel like you can't share something.
Well, anyway, see, we had the P-38s as escort, and so the upper command, after they found out that the P-38s were not doing the job, that's when the P-51s were still in England, but they never did come to Corsica or into any of our bases. So, well, the war in the air really changed for the good, because the P-38s, when they came around, it took them so long to make a round around to fight the German fighters. But the P-51s could go in between there and in and out, and they were so quick, and the war in the air changed. They began to shoot down the German fighters just by the dozens, and we could see them. The pilots would bail out, oh, how am I going to tell you all this? It was phenomenal. What a change it was, and what a relief to us that we could go in further with a P-51 to the target, do our bombing, and come out, and they would go back and refuel and get back to us to escort us home. It was phenomenal. It really was. So I have to say that the war really did change after that.
You tell us about this experience with that's a little lighter, with the Russian woman pilot.
Oh,
when
yeah.
you were on the ground that day.
Okay, while we were in Russia, we got the orders to meet at the, before this, before we even got there, there were 2 tents set up as hospitals, and the nurses were there. And so that's where we were supposed to meet. So we met, and we standing in line, all, couldn't figure out how come we were supposed to be standing in attention. And lo and behold, a P-39, a little P-39 made in America, by the way, came in and landed and taxied up, and we were all standing there waiting, watching her come in. And there was a pilot. She wasn't even 5 foot tall. Beautiful little gal. I never saw one so beautiful in my life in a Russian uniform. Jumped out of that thing and came running up there to our commanding officer. Rice is his name. Saluted him, reached up, pulled him down, and kissed him on the lips. And we were all tickled to death. In fact, after that, he even kind of got a good out of it. She welcomed us all. Then she took around and spun around and saluted. And we all saluted her back. She jumped in that little plane. I say little. P-39 is not too large of a fighter, but that's what we had lent lease to them. And she got in there and drove off, flew off. But what a surprise that was to have her welcome us. That was all set up to do that.